Photographers like to say that the best camera in the world is the one that you have on you. The problem is that each and every year camera companies are complaining that no one's buying cameras. As an event and wedding photographer, my partner Christy and I see one thing more than anything else in the world, and that is people holding up one of these and taking pictures with it all the time. Well, unfortunately, as a professional, I can't rock up to a wedding or an event and say, I'm going to shoot it with one of these. No one will accept that. But I am in need of a camera that is, I guess, as able to be ignored as a smartphone while giving me professional results. And that's why Christy and I picked up the Ricoh GR2. What I love about the GR2 really is the fact that because it is roughly the same size as a smartphone, and it is largely a one-handed camera, I can bring it with me and put it in situations and places that an interchangeable lens camera simply can't go. And because it has that 28mm equivalent lens, it gives me a wide enough field of view to capture all of the action. But if I get in up close and personal with my subjects, it also has a very unique raw street quality to it that I absolutely love, and that I think lends itself to an editorial documentary style of photography that you just don't see a lot in wedding portraiture and so on and so forth. We've become so camera aware as people, and especially when you're shooting weddings and things, like, people get really kind of weird around cameras. And the bigger the camera, the bigger the lens, one of two things is gonna happen. You get the shoulder, you get the people that kind of try and box you out, or you get people that ham it up because they see a big camera and you get this guy. You get this stuff all day long. And that's fun maybe once or twice. But when you're trying to shoot a reception or a wedding or nuptials, and there's somebody in the background or in the foreground even doing that, it's not what you want to deliver. And the thing about the GR2 that makes it such a compelling tool and something that doesn't replace an interchangeable lens camera, but is an added bonus or a second or third camera in your kit, is you can physically put yourself up close and personal with the subjects that you're trying to capture, those really sweet, candid, hidden in-between moments, and not have a camera that people notice at your side or up here in a holster or even by your face. You can just walk up normally, and when you see it happen, lift it, shoot it, put it back down, and no one really is the wiser. And that is this camera's greatest strength. Now, before you go any further, I'm sure there are some of you watching this wondering, well, what are the specs? Well, I don't care about specs that much, which is why I've decided to include them in the description below. Moving on. There are some drawbacks to this thing. For one, it is not an action camera. And I know I just got done talking about how fast it is and how, kind of stealthy it is, but this is not a sports camera, meaning you can put it in continuous autofocus and snap off 3 or 4 shots, in a second, but they're not rapid. And you're also not going to be able to see what you're shooting, given that the blackout on the rear LCD screen is extremely real. But it is functional and it does the job. Although I will say, if you're shooting outdoors in bright light, you may find yourself trying to shield it quite a bit because the glare is real and it doesn't articulate. The autofocus in broad natural daylight is pretty good. The second you get down into lower light or even evening situations, the autofocus is non-existent. Another annoying little quirk about the autofocus is that if you actually want to move the autofocusing points, you have to engage them first by hitting a function button and then using the directional pad to move the point around. Now, it is workable and you kind of get used to it, but at the same time, moving the points left to right, up and down, it's not quick. They don't exactly go where you want them to go. Now, I do appreciate that I do have pretty good coverage on the sensor, but it's kind of a pain in the ass. That being said, this thing has what is known as snap focus. And all snap focus is you are essentially telling the camera to set its autofocusing point within a certain zone based on the aperture. So if you have a f-stop of 2.8, you're gonna have a very shallow depth of field. And so if you set your zone to 1 meter or 3 feet, you're gonna be in focus. As soon as you hit the shutter, this camera is going to be in focus from a little bit before 3 feet to a little bit past 3 feet or 1 meter. Now, if you shoot at f8, and set it to 1 meter, you're gonna find that your depth of field is probably a little bit before 1 meter or 3 feet and quite a few feet or meters past 1 meter. And that's where snap focus comes into play, because if you're really good at judging the distance between yourself and your subject, this thing's the fastest autofocusing camera I have ever used. And that's pretty cool, because then you're not reliant upon lighting conditions, you're not reliant upon contrast, things of that nature, and it becomes incredibly quick to whip this thing out, press power, and snap a shot. Despite this camera having a slightly larger sensor for probably something as compact and like a point and shoot, the APS-C sensor in this is a few generations old at this point, and it doesn't do that well at high ISOs. Anything below 3200, you're going to get great results. If you can even keep it below 1600, this thing is among one of the sharpest camera lens combinations I have ever used. And the lens really is a treat. 28mm is kind of this nice butter zone that Christy and I are really starting to fall in love with. It's not as wide as a 20 or a 24, but it's not quite to portraiture length. And that's what I mean by it gives you this sort of street documentary style to almost damn near everything you shoot. And it does distort along the edges, and there is a little bit of barrel distortion that is noticeable as you get further and further from the center of the frame, but it's not a fisheye effect like an ultra wide lens might be. And while 28mm is hardly your typical portrait focal length, that being 50, 85, and even maybe 100mm plus, you are still able to get and do proper portraiture with this 28mm lens. You may just have to get a little bit closer to your subjects to do it, but it will be more reminiscent of what you're probably used to seeing in fashion and editorial work. As long as you keep your subjects kind of relegated towards the center, the distortion is so minimal that you're not going to give away this lens's secrets. And the 2.8 aperture means that you can get a little bit of that blurry background bokeh goodness, despite this being kind of a wide angle lens. But outside of that, the other things that I love about this camera, besides its simplicity, ease of use, and kind of anonymity, is the fact that the in-camera color profiles are amazing. To be perfectly honest, I actually believe that the black and white monochrome picture profiles inside the GR2 are among the absolute best I've ever seen. But the beautiful thing is that you can shoot RAW and apply these later, or apply your processing as you see fit. The camera itself does allow for processing of RAW photos after the fact, and the free wireless app also allows for the processing and transferring of RAW photos. And this is incredibly cool, because honestly, this thing has one of the best, if not the best, wireless connected apps for any camera I've ever used, especially when it comes to transferring files. So what do you think of the GR2? Is this a professional's camera, or is it just a trumped up toy? I would love to know what you guys think. Obviously, I've just shared what I think, but if you like this camera, or if you own this camera, you're interested in this camera, let me know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, please like and subscribe. And until next time, just keep shooting. Don't worry about the gear. The gear doesn't make you better, only practice and you make yourself better. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one.